Once again, we go into a Barca match review this season just to say they were shocking. They were not good at all, and Madrid win the Clásico 2-1. And the crazy thing about it is, Madrid themselves weren't particularly impressive. It was actually just Barcelona being shocking, which is why Madrid won this game and possibly could have won by more than a one goal margin. If you go into the starting lineups, Madrid went with Courtois, Carreras, Hoyson was back from injury, Militao, Valverde at right back, Tchouameni as a holding pivot, and then Vinny, Guler, Camavinga, Bellingham, I guess as midfielders and wingers, and then Mbappe as the nine, of course. Barcelona went for Chesney, Balde, Kunde, we'll talk about Kunde, Barsi and Eric at center back, De Jong, Pedri pivot, Fermin at 10, and then a front line of Rashford, Ferran, and Yamal. Now, going into this game, everybody knew that Flick won't be available for Barcelona on the touchline, and that Barca would have upwards of six players that are important to the team out with injury. We talk about Dani Olmo, Gavi, Jean Garcia, Ter Stegen, Lewandowski, Rafinha, and Christensen. So it's not to make excuses, but Barca clearly had some important players missing, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. They still had, I guess you can say, some core players there. We talk about Pedri, we talk about Yamal, De Jong was available, Balde was available. The point is that Barca's performance was shocking. I mean, you talk about the way we talk about the defense, of course. That's been the main thing about Barca's season so far this season. I mean, you talk about it. I mean, it's just very poor. You think about the games like Levante away, the Girona game that they just won recently, the Sevilla away game where Barca lost 4-1. I mean, the way even these weaker teams are basically penetrating Barca's defense, if you could even call it that, is just way too easy for them. So of course, Madrid was always going to do the same, and that was always going to happen. I think because Hansi Flick is not going to change the system, and if your front attacking press and attacking threat is weak, then your high line is going to be weak. Your defense is going to be weak if you're playing a high line. So that was always going to happen. But if we talk about the attack for Barcelona, I know Lewandowski's injured. I know Rafinha's injured. I know Olmo's injured. Whatever. If we talk about the attack for Barcelona, Ferran and Rashford are more than enough of, or more than good enough of players to at least not be static for the entire game. What they did do instead, for the entire 90 minutes plus, Rashford and Ferran were playing rock, paper, scissors with each other. They did not even care to make runs, especially Ferran. He was absolutely static the entire game. You talk about strikers occupying center backs. He wasn't occupying them. They were occupying him because literally he was just standing in between Hoyson and Militao and just not doing anything. And then when he did get the ball, which wasn't too many times, he just lost it instantly. So Ferran was actually shocking, like truly, truly shocking. Rashford, other than the assist, didn't do enough. He was also static for a lot of the game, but just wasn't good enough, wasn't threatening enough. I think Valverde was one of the Madrid players that had a pretty good game. I think he did well to handle Rashford. I think performance-wise overall with the players on the pitch, I mean, Courtois didn't have to do much. Hoyson didn't have to do much. The center backs of Madrid didn't have to do much except just hold their structure because Barca were just anything but threatening. Fermin, other than the goal, his other shots were truly diabolical. I mean, they were straight at Courtois with no power, no swerve, nothing. So the few attacking chances that Barca had, they weren't finished. The moral of the story is that Barca was very, very, very dull, very diabolical on the attacking and final third. And for that reason, that's why they couldn't get more than one goal here, considering this is a Hansi Flick Barca team. Their entire motto is attacking. So yeah, I think this game it came down to more of, you know, I think a lot of the onus is on Barca for this game being the way it was. I think Madrid this season and last season, you can name any players they have. I mean, regardless of the players, their performance hasn't been good. And even today, yes, they generated a lot of XG. I think it was about 3 XG. See here real quick. 3.6 XG. Of course, you can say one was a penalty, but a lot of that XG is just Barca being way too open for anybody's liking. If any team watches this Barca defensive performance, it would just be a laughing stock. So a lot of Madrid's XG was generated from a lot of space being offered rather than the brilliance of these Madrid players. People talk about, for example, oh, Pedri wasn't good today, and I talk about Bellingham being absolutely monstrous. Of course, Bellingham got won the game for Madrid with the goal and the assist, but I think performance-wise, if we compare them, uh, is there a comparison thing here? No, we can just do this. If we compare them, I mean, as an actual midfielder performance, let's go to the list here. As an actual midfielder performance, I mean, disregarding goals and assists, I mean, Pedri, of course, Pedri, we have to say he didn't have the best of games, but he wasn't. Pedri never has a bad game. He just wasn't too impactful, and it makes sense because the attack of Barca was not moving at all. So if anything, Pedri had to defend, try to control, and make the runs for Barca, which is the reason why I think he even got the red card in the first place. But yeah, I mean, Bellingham was more of a decisive player in the final third rather than a huge midfielder for the control of the game for Madrid, which they didn't have much of. But the point is that none of the Madrid's players were actually truly spectacular, which is crazy to say because if that's the case, how bad did Barca have to be for them not to even look good in this game, let alone lose? So very, very poor. And I want to single out Kunde because he's been very poor this season. And of course, there were moments of last season where he wasn't too good. And I think as a right back, he's been poor attacking wise and defensively. We talk about the fullbacks of the modern game. For example, Balde, he does decent defensively. He's very good going forward. We talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example, a very good attacking fullback, but doesn't do well defensively. I think Koundé has been getting cooked defensively and just is essentially a non-factor attacking wise. And I think a lot of that has to do with what his skill set is, what his abilities are. He doesn't have the agility to be a elite level attacking fullback, and he's getting fried by wingers, whether it's Vinny, whether it's Brian Zaragoza of Osasuna from last season, whoever it may be. Kun has been getting fried defensively and is irrelevant in the attack. We talk about the chance that he had that Lamine created for him at the end of the second half or towards the end of the second half. He tried to chest the ball down instead of just finishing the ball. I mean, that is just an amateur decision, an amateur attempt at controlling the ball. It was just amateur all around. And Kunda has been very, very, very poor for definitely this whole season, but even towards the moments, a lot of moments last season, even when Barca were playing well, he would have games where he was good defensively, but he was never that fullback that you want going attacking wise. So very, very poor. And if it was up to me, if I was Hansi Flick, I'm not even getting Kunde near the starting 11, especially as a right back, until further notice, until he basically looks better in training first, let alone in the games. So yeah, overall, just not good from Barcelona. And this has been the story this season. You talk about the games against from the start. You talk about the game against Mallorca. You move on to, for example, the Levante game, the Sevilla game. You can name most of the games this season Barca had, whether they won or lost. Not been good enough. Not been good enough. And a lot of that has to do with, yes, the offside trap is not working as well. Teams are clocking it, but the front line has been not as good pressing wise, a press overall from the team, whether it's the front line, the defenders, midfielders, not good enough, not enough control of the ball. And Barca today were very horizontal. You talk about Hansi Flick teams, and they are usually very vertical. They get the ball and instantly try to find the incisive pass through, or look for the goal instantly. But today Barca were very horizontal, passing very lethargically, not enough speed on the ball. And yes, that's because, the performance of the players, but it's also because the front line was once again extremely, extremely, extremely static. The point is, not good enough. Barca had their first loss their first loss in El Clasico, in what, five Clásicos, four Clásicos. So you can say in regards to the Clásico, it's not the end of the world, but performance-wise, Barca has to figure out a lot of stuff. Talk about the squad and the available players. I think Laporta and Deco, I mean, it's just a joke at this point. The recruitments that were made in the summer, I mean, it's just diabolical. There's nothing more to say about that. So yeah, nothing special from either team. It was just one of those games where I think what Lamine said earlier on spiced it up a little bit more than needed because if it wasn't for that, this game would have been maybe even a snooze fest. So yeah, Barca lose 2-1 the first Clasico of the season, and it just wasn't a good enough performance. You can't look at this any other way. And the worst thing about it is that you can say Barca performed poorly and Madrid performed well. I think Madrid's performance of well was actually the structure and them not allowing Barca to just eat them alive. And it wasn't necessarily Madrid being spectacular and all this individual brilliance and Barca players being taken on left, right, and center. Losing every ground duel. It wasn't necessarily a case of Madrid being magical, which usually isn't the case. They just win the games by pragmatism, but it was more so about Barca being bad. So that's why I say the onus is a lot on them for even not just the loss, but how the game went. But let's see how it will look next game. I don't think Hansi Flick's gonna make any changes to the system unless the press improves. Uh, so unless the press improves, it's gonna be like this the entire season. Unless they get some signings in the winter, which won't happen considering the finances, it's gonna look like this all season. So this is what it is. Real Madrid get the 3 points on the Clasico. They're 5 points ahead, and that's that.